It is 10:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Major news in the world of college athletics as the NCAA and its power conferences are moving towards a settlement in 3 pending federal antitrust cases. The settlement reportedly includes a revenue-sharing agreement that would allow Power 5 schools to share up to $20 million a year with student athletes. College baseball, the SEC tournament continues in Hoover. Tennessee bounced back with a 7-4 win over Texas A&M on Thursday. Vanderbilt moved past Mississippi State with the 4-3 win. Tennessee takes on Mississippi State tonight at 6:30 in an elimination game. Vandy will take on the winner of that game on Saturday. The SEC championship will happen Sunday in Hoover. Thursday in the NBA, the Celtics race past the Pacers 126-110. They take game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Celtics have a 2-0 lead as the series heads to Indiana this weekend. And in the NHL, Connor McDavid scored the game winner in double OT as the Oilers beat the Stars in game 1 of the Western Conference Finals.
Tanev plays the puck up the boards. Here's Bouchard in front. Score! Connor McDavid, the redirect early in the second overtime. The Edmonton Oilers win game 1, 32 seconds in. Period 5.
What a play.
Audio courtesy of TNT. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. We're very happy to have you. You made it. Congratulations. It's Friday. Good morning, boys.
Good morning.
Morning, buddy.
God. We're going to keep doing that thing. I thought it was gone. You lulled me into a false sense of security.
You're never safe when you're with me.
Yeah, that's God knows that's the truth. Just continuing to encroach upon my personal space. I told Jackson, I was like, it's so nice to have my space back. I've been bubble boy for the last 3 years. Everybody's been in a completely opposite room for me for so long.
This is how I know you've missed me, because you keep talking about how you didn't miss me.
I don't know that that's true, but I did miss you guys, and we're happy to have you at least for the next 3 hours. 615-737-1045. Jump in if you like. We got Coach Mack. We got Cameron Wolfe of the NFL Network. They'll be on in just a little bit. And we've got a major shift in the landscape of collegiate athletics again. So, as college athletics and the most relevant of the sports, college football, continue to evolve into whatever the modern age of this as a business structure looks like, there is huge news that comes down late last night. In fact, right before prime time, when we got started about 7 o'clock. The NCAA, and now it says here the 5 power conferences, but we know that's not quite true anymore. Whatever's left of the Pac-12.
They technically are still an entity, I suppose.
They are here. They are at the table. Are they at the table or are they at the kids' table? Because there's only 2 of them left.
They're at the table, but they're on a much shorter chair, but the table height is the same. So you can't even see. You can see like the top of their heads.
What is worse, sitting at a chair that is too short at a table that is too tall, or sitting at a chair that is too tall for a table that is too short? Because that has happened to me recently, and I hated it.
So what's worse, to have a table up to your chest, or like your knees?
It was like, it was like kind of like, I don't know. It was basically kneecaps. It was very uncomfortable. I felt awkward trying to bend down and eat my food.
It's definitely the knee one. I would rather look like a child than like the knee thing.
I just felt so exposed. I felt like there was too much of me above the table. I didn't like that at all.
The table is used to hide things.
So the table, I don't know what they're trying to hide. The table's used to hide things.
Anyway.
So the NCAA, technically 5 power conferences, they have finally agreed and come together to allow schools to directly pay players for the first time in the 100-plus year history of college sports. rejoice, celebrate. There's a settlement of about $2.7 billion that will be paid out in damages over the course of the next 10 years in that NCAA House settlement. According to ESPN, many people reporting on this throughout the course of it. It has also agreed to put in a revenue-sharing model that will allow each school to share up to roughly $20 million per year with its athletes. So there it is. There's the bones for the payment structure. There's the bones for making the players employees of the school. How far we are away from unions, we'll talk about, I'm sure, throughout the course of the next couple of months. But there's also your salary cap in the midst of all this, because that is the kind of money that's going to be able to be allocated, and I'm sure we'll get more details on who's going to be in charge of the money and who's not allowed to be in charge of the money. Billy Napier, too close to the vest with everything that's going on with the Jaden Rashada lawsuit right now. But this is, again, just the latest landscape shifting domino in the world of college sports. And how it's going to impact fans directly, we'll see. I don't think we're at a point where you guys are going to stop watching your favorite teams.
Won't change Saturdays, at least for the near future. And this isn't something that can be implemented until at least 2025. Like, there is a settlement finalization process that has to take place and be certified. This is just both sides announcing they've agreed to these terms, and then it all has to formally be laid out. There is still a lot to be done here. But also the back pay damages to former athletes. You're talking about almost $3 billion that both the NCAA and schools are going to have to share every year to help settle this case. And this is something that if it had gone all the way to court, this would have been the thing that officially put the NCAA under. Like sums of upwards of $20 billion that would have absolutely decimated the NCAA. They would have gone bankrupt. So if there's one big takeaway here, it's that NCAA is still your governing body. Like all the talk about the NCAA is done for. In its last format, that wasn't sustainable. NCAA is not going anywhere. So we'll talk about it later, just how much does this stabilize college athletics. But if you have one big takeaway, it's that NCAA is still very much at the forefront in determining the future of college athletics. This is at least another step in the right direction. Like NIL was a step in the right direction, and then all sorts of issues came down from that. This is another step in the right direction, but to act like we're good, wipe our hands, and college athletics is fixed, I think would be a little bit naive.
Has anybody talked to Ed O'Bannon? The person who's kind of on the forefront of this, the former college basketball player that first sued and became then the face of the class action lawsuit against the NCAA. The whole reason that the NCAA football game went away for name, image, and likeness purposes. The whole, I mean, he's kind of the face of the movement, and I feel like we don't hear his name invoked very often, maybe because he's not involved in the ongoing lawsuits or anything at this point, having his situation settled. But still, I'd just be curious to see his thoughts on how much has changed since he first got into the public eye this way, and kind of, at least I feel, and I hope I'm not excluding somebody who is as important to the place that collegiate athletes now have the opportunity to make money, because this whole thing has been designed specifically to keep these players from making money. That's the whole separation of, in the case of athletics, church and state, or pro and collegiate, where the whole student-athlete, guys, has continued to be an excuse for institutions and the organization that is the NCAA, that's supposed to be there to protect them, to basically profit off of them without them seeing a dime. So I have a bunch of questions. I'd love to see Ed O'Bannon interviewed. I'd love to be able to talk to him. I don't know if that's possible. I don't even know how we would go about reaching out. But there is a couple of notes in here that are interesting, and we'll obviously talk about this in the coming months. This is going to be an ongoing story. This is just the latest. There is a note in here. All Division I athletes dating back to 2016 are eligible to receive a share as a part of the settlement class. In exchange, athletes cannot sue the NCAA for other potential antitrust violations and must drop their complaints in 3 open cases, which is the House v. NCAA, the most famous one, also going on Hubbard and Carter, both v. NCAA. I was hanging out with Worth Campbell at TrueMav this morning, and Worth was I don't know if he was a walk-on or a scholarship player, football player at Auburn, but he's a 2015 NCAA Division I athlete.
Missed it by that much.
He's going to miss out on the payment. So I would be curious to know why specifically 2016 is the date. Like I said, this is just the very, very surface of this, and we're still finding out a ton more information. What's the thing that you immediately thought of, or what first popped into your head when you saw this news break last night?
What gets cut? Because now schools have to pay up. The figure we're looking at is $22 million. So roughly $20 million, as you said, per school. What gets cut? Jobs? Facilities? How does it impact Title IX? There's a lot of questions about how schools are going to pay for this because, yes, we have revenue sharing, and that's great, and that figure is going to rise with revenue, but schools budget that money. So this complicates things for athletic directors, especially athletic directors, even of certain Power 5 schools like a Texas Tech, right? May have a tougher job figuring out how to get this done as opposed to a Texas or a Texas A&M or an Alabama or a Tennessee. So that was my first thing. What gets cut, whether that's jobs, whether that's facilities. And the other thing, scholarship caps appear to be gone. That's going to be replaced by lower roster caps. So your buddy was a former walk-on. Are we close to the end of the era of walk-ons in college athletics? Because if scholarships are not going to be limited and rosters are going to be cut to, let's say you can't have more than 85 players, or there are college football rosters that have 110 guys, right? Because walk-ons are unlimited. You can have as many guys as you want that are paying tuition on your football team. But if scholarships are the thing that become unlimited and roster space do not, then what's the incentive of having walk-ons on your roster? And think about the amount of walk-ons that have decorated college football history. Baker Mayfield comes to mind, right? Like so many guys that was part of their story. So that is a very interesting component of this. There's just so many layers that I know we'll get to. What happens with NIL, it's still around. But does NCAA have more power to prohibit pay-for-play from collectives now with this settlement, with some type of court backing, or do state laws still supersede that stuff when it comes down to it? So as much as this is a great step in principle, and it was necessary, there's still so many complications to sort through.
There's something that I want to get to involving this and the University of Tennessee, and specifically Donde Plowman. So we'll do that coming up next. We're also going to talk some Titans here this morning, but this is the biggest story in sports throughout the course of, everything. College football, the NFL, NBA, NHL, everything. This is pretty altering in the landscape of collegiate athletics. And so I think there's some positives to be taken if you're a Tennessee fan, and I'll tell you what they are coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. We've just gotten the latest update on the Titans' next media availability. I told you there were 5 open dates for media remaining. The next will be Wednesday, so you will hear from Brian Callahan at the podium at 12:45, although that doesn't seem to be happening at 12:45 in the last couple of Brian Callahan availabilities. We're having to adjust as a show because Vrabel had a schedule for press conferences, and now you and I don't know what to do with ourselves because the press conference schedule is different. All right, good talk.
Yes.
Did he forget to turn his mic on?
I don't know.
No, I just had nothing there.
All right. So he wants me to do the thing that I tease so people don't run away from the radio. Donnie Plowman, why this matters for Tennessee, the news story that we were talking about with the NCAA and the Power 5 agreeing to a deal that will let schools directly pay players. Now, again, there are so many different levels of detail that we still do not have yet on questions that you probably have about all the things that are going forward. And I assure you that somebody smarter than us has the answers. But right now, we just have the 1,000-foot view of what the plan is to make sure that the NCAA can continue to operate in some form or fashion. And basically, so college sports don't get bankrupted here, because that's kind of the thing. And I know, people roll their eyes when they hear that, just like in the pandemic, right? You remember all the SEC programs that were crying poor about the financial situations, when you know how much SEC programs make year over year, you know how many of them finish in the black. And I think everybody else who were dealing with financial difficulties during the pandemic heard Nick Saban say, tough times for the athletic department right now, rolled their eyes and said, bleep you. But when the Notre Dame president gets out there with this statement after the NCAA's Board of Governors and leaders from the ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, SEC, and what remains of the Pac-12 voted to accept the general terms that are laid out in this 13-page document. Have you read the document yet?
I have not read the entire thing.
So Notre Dame also a part of this as a member of the ACC for the purposes of the settlement. This is the statement from the Notre Dame president and why it matters for Tennessee. I'll tell you in a second. The settlement, though undesirable in many respects and promising only temporary stability, which we'll get to later on, is necessary to avoid what would be the bankruptcy of college athletics. This is from John Jenkins, the Notre Dame president. To save the great American institution of college sports, Congress must pass legislation that will preempt the current patchwork of state laws, establish that our athletes are not employees, but students seeking college degrees, and provide protection from further antitrust lawsuits that will allow colleges to make and enforce rules that will protect our student athletes and help ensure competitive equity among our teams. Now, there are some things that I agree with him on there. There's some things that people, including the University of Tennessee, already actively kind of working to the counter of, which is what he says here, that Congress must pass legislation that will establish that our athletes are not employees, but students seeking college degrees. You remember the report from the Knoxville News-Sentinel a couple of months ago, after the state of Tennessee and the Commonwealth of Virginia came together to sue the NCAA. And the report was that Donnie Plowman, among other Tennessee administrators, had already begun the planning and working through the initial phases of framework that would make the student athletes employees. Being on the forefront of this, being prepared for this, being proactive as opposed to reactive, which it looks like the NCAA has been for the better part of, I don't know,
ever.
10 decades, a century of just clown show. Anyway.
When did the NCAA officially become an organization? Founded by Theodore Roosevelt in 1906.
Okay. So Tennessee is prepared for this to go one way or the other, which is why I say initial phases, framework, use those kind of words, because you have to have multiple plans prepared depending on how this goes. Because clearly, based on the Notre Dame president's statement, there's still some disagreement among the powers that be who have agreed to this settlement about how they're going to do this moving forward. Because this is calling for Congress to take action that to date they've been pretty slow to make, or, had, fortunately, more pressing matters to attend to than dealing with name, image, and likeness, though this is a pretty significant thing as far as the economy around it goes. This is a huge economy around college athletics, so there's too much money at stake to be outright ignored. I'm so curious to see how much Tennessee continues to be on the forefront of this. And I don't know Dondi Plowman. I know Ramon and Slay obviously know her well. I don't know what anybody else's exposure to her has been around here. Was she at Tennessee when you were at Tennessee?
No, it was
Jackson.
It was old Bev.
Yes, she was there when I was at Tennessee.
Yeah, she came in as I was leaving with Bev on the way out. Miss Bev, not really, but
there she is.
A fever dream when Bev was in charge.
We'll remember her always.
She was a lovely lady, talked to a couple of my classes, very nice woman.
Because when you're in trouble at the University of Tennessee, all you need to do is say, so all your problems are resolved, unless you're John Curry.
There's revenue sharing, but no CBA. So there's just some really interesting dynamics here. What other league or professional sport, because every professional sport has revenue sharing of some sort, right?
Yep.
That's how athletes are paid. Mm-hmm. They also all have collective bargaining agreements and NFL player associations. We don't have that in the side of college athletics.
Correct.
So
that's the next thing.
The murkiness does not go away.
Well, but the thing, and you and I have invoked this discussion before, because I think it was on, like Pate did it on his podcast, Josh Pate at Late Kick Live, where he's talking about the number of people, the high-level minds and powers that be, the real power in collegiate athletics, who have kind of been on the sidelines for at least the preliminary phases of all of this and its impact. Because I think it is okay to let things play out. The NCAA at the time, I believe, used the exploratory period on the initial phases after the Supreme Court ruling, and then the exploratory period became, in their own words, the wild, wild west, and now you need to rein the thing back in. So there's been a lot of high-level people and smart people in collegiate athletics that are now just coming to the discussion, or have in recent months, or really maybe in the last year or so, been working behind the scenes to make sure that there is a plan in place to preserve this institution, just because, and the institution being collegiate athletics as a whole, just because you haven't seen the exact dividends of that right away does not mean that it's going to get so much worse. There are people working to make sure that it doesn't get so much worse, even as when the news, hits us or hits you and we react to it. It may feel like, oh my God, what now in college sports? What's this going to do for college football? What does all this mean? Well, it's still being worked through. It is the definition of a keep your powder dry type of situation, because there are so many damn layers to this. How many member institutions are in the world? How many teams play D1 college football? How many programs?
I think the number is at 120.
So still, that 120 times however many athletes you have on the roster, on scholarship, walk-ons, whatever, all the different things, all the administrative stuff you have to work through, all the budgetary stuff that impacts.
134, Jackson says.
The ripple effects are massive. So I'm interested to see how much Tennessee can kind of carve out themselves as being on the forefront of this, because they have seemed to be prepared at every turn where the dominoes have fallen. And I really, really like that if I'm a Vols fan looking at Dondi Plowman overseeing this thing.
Well, an interesting thing about this will be how collectives work with schools, because it seems like a part of this will be programs, schools will be provided economic incentives for collectives to be in-house. So they still want to prohibit boosters swooping in with pay for play. Like the thing the NCAA was trying to get Tennessee for technically would still be illegal here, unless Tennessee was paying Nico as part of their revenue sharing as a university. But the idea of a collective, a booster sending a private jet to get Nico and then coming up with this money, or the Florida situation with Rashada, still would not be above board in this new world that we're looking at. So,
and it shouldn't be.
Sure.
The coaches should not have the ability to impact the money, or directly handle the money. There's too much that can go wrong there. There's too much red tape surrounding it already. The coaches have to be as far removed from the money as humanly possible, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. But NIL's not going anywhere. No. Like, what they want to do here, I think, is take what has happened. NIL has just turned into basically what revenue sharing is, just the money's not coming from revenue sharing, right? It's coming from the millionaires surrounding athletic programs. They want to take that piece of things and take it over to make that revenue sharing. That comes directly from schools, and NIL can be what it was designed to be in the first place, which is you make money based on your name, image, and likeness, based on the things that you do, whether that's advertising, whatever it might be, social media stuff, local places, national companies. So if that's what plays out, remains to be seen. But I think the goal here is for, collectives aren't going anywhere, but for collectives to be more in-house in conjunction with the university, as opposed to kind of a third-party entity just throwing money at kids and calling it NIL.
615-737-1045. If you have thoughts on what's happening in the world of collegiate athletics right now, what your initial reactions were to the NCAA and the 5 power conferences agreeing to allow schools to directly pay players for the first time in over the 100-year history of college sports. It's a crazy story, and of course we're going to continue to talk about it, as I said, because the updates really haven't even started yet. You can join 104.5 The Zone for the 2024 Spring Golf Classic presented by Ferguson and State Water Heaters on Friday, June the 7th at Greystone Golf Club. A great day accompanied by food, cocktails, and prizes. There are 2 flights for you to choose from between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. so you can spend the day teeing off with us at Greystone Golf Club on Friday, June the 7th. The teams are extremely limited, so to purchase a team, visit 1045thezone.com. Today, there is also some commentary in the chat about, wouldn't it be easier, Isaac Whaley on YouTube, wouldn't it be easier to just attach a set stipend amount to players' star ranking? 1 star equals $1,000 a week, 5 star equals $5,000 a week. Just a thought. I don't think it's as simple as that.
It's not. Yeah.
I don't think that it could possibly be as simple as that.
No, it's every player is going to have a different value. It's also based on what the school can afford and how the school wants to allocate its assets. That's too easy, right? It's too cut and dry to just keep it blanket that way, because some players will believe they're worth more than that.
We don't even know how these people are taxed.
Yeah.
We do. We know how they're taxed right now, but the tax situation is something that has to be worked through before you can boil it down to $1,000 a week for a 1-star.
Well, and then you're talking about. And a 1-star recruit. What is a 1-star recruit, right? Yeah. I mean, that's barely a walk-on caliber player at a Power 5 program.
And that's a lot of money that you're just so I understand conceptually what they're trying to, but what happens if the walk-on guy becomes the starting quarterback? And then, is there going to be a fixed rate? Is there a contract? What are the terms?
Or the 5-star just doesn't pan out whatsoever, which happens all the time. You're letting high school recruiting websites essentially decide what kids are getting paid.
I am so shocked to see a comment. Do you know how long it's been since I've seen a comment that says they are getting paid in education and free tuition? Like that
Kyle in the F&M Bank chat.
Kyle Barch on YouTube says they are getting paid in education and free tuition. Like that almost looks like a foreign language to me. It's been so long since we've had to have that stupid argument.
It is. It's one of the most flawed arguments in sports. I don't understand how people come to that conclusion when the amount of people that are making millions and millions and millions around what athletes are doing, and the idea that what's tuition at Indiana? Out-of-state tuition.
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's out-of-state?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, let's say $35,000 to $40,000 a year,
I'm
right?
Say it's more than that. I'll look it up.
Okay, let's say $60,000 to $70,000 a year, right? So the idea of whether it's coaches or administrators or TV people, whatever, making literally millions. What is it? You're making a face.
$41,000
a year
for out of state versus
out of state.
12.
Oh yeah, that's how it works, man.
For
that's
Indiana
crazy.
residents. Oh my God.
Tennessee. When I was graduating high school in Alabama, trying to go to Tennessee, I was desperately trying to find whatever scholarship I could for my $35,000 a year tuition. So
that just makes me love my parents even more, because I've never even looked at a tuition statement like that.
But to say they're getting
my
paid,
mom and say thank you.
to say you're getting paid in education and free tuition is just scoffing and being okay with so many people making millions off of what you're doing, yet you make $40,000 a year. Like, that sounds fair to you?
It's a weirdo type of thing, right? And it's not like, I'm not saying just because Kyle expressed that opinion that he is, I'm not trying to put people in a box this way. But anytime I hear that, it just makes me think, oh, you're jealous of the college athlete that's about to make a lot more money than a lot of people have the ability to make doing whatever their day jobs or have the opportunity to make or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that it's not a natural emotion or that it's not, I don't want to say justifiable because, be bigger than that if you're an adult who's being envious of an 18-year-old who has the opportunity to make real money and better their circumstances, just as you want anybody to have the opportunity to make real money and better their circumstances. I don't love how much it just comes off as, oh, you're just jealous of a player who's going to be able to make this. And, I think you find that as a pretty common theme specific to sports. Doesn't mean that everybody feels that way. But it's just, again, like you said, such a flawed argument. There's too much evidence to the contrary of the value of what these people are getting on their college education. That how many athletes, and there's some, like I think Tannehill was like an engineering major or something like that. But there's a lot of dudes who do it just to play football. And you make the jokes about Cardale Jones, we're not here to play school. But seriously, like their value is the football program, not the math and sciences building necessarily, if you truly think that you have the ability to make it as a professional athlete.
The thing that's lost on people with that opinion is what college football has become. Like, okay, if that is your opinion in 1972, that's one thing. But even in the last 20 years, the way that TV revenue has exploded in college athletics, like there is no difference between a college football player and the revenue that he generates versus an NFL player and the revenue he generates. The amount could be more in the NFL, obviously, but the principle is the exact same. So why separate those things and say because the kid is 19 that he shouldn't get any of that money? Like, that is the thing that makes no sense to me, and it just ignores the crazy amounts of money that college athletics makes.
615-737. You wanted to do guard talk today. I'm so mad at you.
We are going to do guard talk today.
I'm so mad at you.
The guard is important, Buck. The guard is important. As much as you want to scoff at it.
I can't believe he tried to talk me into doing a whole 20 segment on Peter Skoronski here. I'm so mad at you.
We're going to talk about Peter Skoronski today.
You will not get me to do guard talk today. 615-737-1045. It's like a slur. Get out of here.
We are going to talk about the very important piece of the Titans offensive line that is critical to their success in 2024. That may seem insane to you, but yes, we're going to talk about it.
Which means I have to take phone calls. Let's go to Jordan, who's a truck driver. God, I'm having a hard time speaking today. Hey, Jordan.
Hey, my question is, do you think that they should cap it like the NFL does on a salary cap for the colleges? Like, everybody gets 25 million or everybody gets 15 million, and to cap it like that, and then the NIL money is, of course, if you're a more famous player like Sanders or something like that, then that's your personal gain right there. But do you think they should cap it off like that?
Well, they have set an amount according to the reporting on this. Thank you for the call, Jordan. And I want to find the figure. Lucas, you have it in front of you?
Roughly $22 million per school.
$22 million per school.
That can be distributed. And that's to all athletes across all sports.
Correct.
Right? So think about the Jaden Rashada thing where he's offered over $13 million to play for Florida, or Nico Iamaleava where he's offered $8 million. Now, that's $8 million over 4 years, and we're talking about roughly $22 million per year. So, but it would be interesting to see how it's distributed, because there are certain athletes that would take up a big chunk of that.
Well, and this is because that I think is the differentiation, because he pointed it out there. I don't want people to get this mixed up. This is separate from name, image, and likeness.
Yeah.
The schools don't pay name, image, and likeness. That is something unto itself. Like, Caitlin Clark is going to continue to have her own relationship with State Farm outside of what Iowa owes her as a part of being a revenue generator for the University of Iowa. I want to make sure that people are differentiating that, because this doesn't like do away with NIL or fold NIL into the $22 million per school that we're talking about here. Let's go to Joshua, who's in graphic design.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
You keep saying how much money people are making off of these these athletes. But if you think about it, the higher ups in the radio industry are making millions and millions off of your salary, which I don't know how much you make, but I mean that's capitalism. That's how it works.
Well, yeah, but the difference between me and the former athletes, Joshua, is that I'm compensated and they have been actively worked against to avoid compensation. You get that, right?
I do get that, but I mean,
It's like, I'm not going to, Joshua, I'm already unrelatable and I already have a bit of pretentiousness to me. Don't make me talk about what I make on the air.
Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. But,
Thank you.
You have free medical care, 3 meals a day.
Those are basic human functions. I don't buy that. They deserve way more.
Here's the thing.
They get medical care and 3 meals a day. This is prison?
Let's say, for example.
What are we talking about?
Let's say, Buck.
I just got Joshua, I'm not mad at you. That blew my mind in real time.
So we're talking about the concept of, Buck, we'd like for you to host a show on this radio station. We're not going to pay you a salary. What we are going to do, you want to get your master's somewhere? You can get it for free. You don't have to pay a dime. You can get a degree and we'll feed you we'll send 3 meals a day to your house. Boom. We'll even pay for your lodging. We will pay your rent.
Sure.
We will send you 3 meals a day.
Which matters.
And you can go study and get your master's and you don't have to pay a dime for it. Would you take that deal?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Pay me money.
I want
and then
money.
I will decide what to do with it.
You don't get to tell me how I'm going to live my life based on the money that you owe me for the job that I do. I don't know why that's so hard. I'm not mad at you, Joshua. I'm sorry that I'm yelling. Bad tone. We'll get more of your phone calls coming up next. Lucas has an SEC stat of the day. The SEC tournament had a lot of action that we have yet to talk about here locally. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. We do try to plan from time to time. Sometimes the technology fails us. Sometimes it's operator error. Lucas used to lie to me and blame the technology instead of his own incompetence. But now he's on
multiple occasions.
He's now on this side. Jackson is doing the exact same. Don't give me the thumbs up. Don't give me the thumbs up. It's an audio medium. Tell me what's happening.
I restarted the application. We're good to go now.
Play the damn music.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about the SEC. Let's talk about
Kalen DeBoer
and Josh Heupel in the SEC. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about the SEC. Let's talk about Brian Kelly and Greg Sankey in the SEC. Let's talk about sex.
I hate him so much.
I wanted it updated. He updated it. I'm not seeing a problem. The SEC stat of the day is 7-4 because Tennessee relief pitcher A.J. Causey struck out 7-4 coming in relief of Chris Stamos, who had arguably his best start of the season. Typically, Tennessee's Friday starter got the start against Texas A&M. He did not allow a hit until the third inning, which was a homer, was the only hit he allowed, struck out 3, walked 1, and Tennessee moves past Texas A&M in the SEC tournament down in Hoover. They take on Mississippi State tonight in an elimination game because Mississippi State fell 4-3. Vanderbilt able to hold off a late rally from the Bulldogs, and Mississippi State takes on Tennessee today. The winner will play Vanderbilt tomorrow. SEC championship game is Sunday in Hoover, so potential if Tennessee gets the start tonight. We expect, I think, Drew Beam to get the ball. He is Tennessee's typical Saturday starter, so expect to see him tonight against Mississippi State for the right to play Vandy tomorrow. And I think that tomorrow should be an all bragging rights matchup if it is Tennessee and Vanderbilt, right? Because the argument from Tennessee fans the other day was, well, it was a midweek lineup, right? Johnny Allstaff rolled out there, and you know what? Vanderbilt, explosive. They got their runs. They move on. They routed Tennessee. Tennessee fans saying that it's because of that decision by Tony Vitello. Vanderbilt saying that that's just an excuse. So I think that if they play tomorrow and Tennessee figures to roll out a Sunday starter, then whoever wins that game gets the ultimate bragging rights for the 2023-24 college baseball season.
Oh, God knows that there'll be a Twitter pissing match between Will Bowling and Jack Gentry. They were going back and forth about it, I think, yesterday after Tennessee got spanked by Vanderbilt. All right, back to the phones on what's happening with the NCAA, the revenue sharing model that has been agreed upon with the NCAA, the Power 5 conference powers that be on paying players directly as institutions for the first time. A lot of you guys want to chime in on this. How about Philly Mike up next? Hey, buddy.
Hey, good morning, guys. How you doing, man? Great show.
Thanks for calling.
Lucas, congratulations, man, on your engagement, brother.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
It was great meeting you at the install a couple weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
At the Hutton Hotel, man. So good job. Hey, quick recap. I played Division I college basketball at St. Joe's University back in Philly, back from 74 to 78. And back then, the scholarship you signed each year. So I had a 4-year scholarship worth $15,000 a year. So that's $60,000 that my parents saved. So I got my degree in food marketing, which enabled me to get a job in sales. Started with Procter & Gamble, then with Coca-Cola, so forth and so on. So I'm still in sales. So that education helped me to get where I am today, because I was a good player in college, but not good enough for the NBA. So a lot of players of today aren't focusing on their studies. They're putting more focus on athletics. And the danger is when those guys make it and retire, they're still young, but they may not have anything to fall back on, or they don't make it at all, and there's nothing for them to do without an education. So I think the NCAA will probably do a stair step. If the players of the 60s get X amount, players like me in the 70s make it a small amount, we make it $1,000 or whatever.
Right.
But I think the players, the men and women of today, deserve to get a chunk of that business, because a lot of revenue, towns, hotels, restaurants, a lot of revenue is brought in based on what the athletes are doing and what those teams are doing. So that's my story. So I was able to get my education for free, save mom and dad $60,000, I was able to get a job right out of college. And back in '78 with Procter & Gamble, $30,000 was my salary, which was big at that time. So that was a huge benefit for me, and my education keeps me going. So that's all I got to say, man. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much for the call, Mike. You as well. It's important context because we're dealing, I mean, I don't know, we specifically are dealing with the athlete side of things for the people who have been looking for this opportunity, who are going to college to then go on to play professional sports, and it is the top 1% of the top 1%, and there are a lot of different people with a lot of situations, just like Mike articulated, that education is still a huge benefit. But it should not stop at the education and the opportunities that education affords you, which is how Mike put a bow on it.
But that element does get lost, though.
For sure.
Right? Like, there is a benefit, and athletes that bounce around to 4 or 5 different schools and never have, I don't know how many of these guys end up with an actual degree from a school in something that could help them further down the road. It is a part of it, and it does get lost.
Let's go to Derek, who's an engineer, up next.
Yeah, I want to talk about the piece of that the IRS will play in this. So when they make them employees, are they making them 1099 or W-2? I mean, obviously there's no answers to these yet, but it plays in fact because then everything they make, including this free tuition, becomes income, and it's taxable. All their benefits, all the other pieces outside of the normal paycheck that they'll be getting, it's all taxable. The government and the states that have state income tax are licking their chops over this. They're like, yes, please.
No, it's a great point, Derek.
Give us $22 million more a year, or however it's divvied up, to tax. We want all this. And so these kids aren't going to make as much money as people think, because the government's going to take their chunk out. And if you live in a state that has state income tax, it's a bigger chunk. So, yeah, I'm all about them getting paid, and they should get paid, but the schools need to be careful how they structure it so they don't.
That was so mean what you did to Derek. You gave him the music and not Mike. Jackson playing favorites already.
Special treatment around here.
That's how it goes, Derek, but it is a good call. Thank you for providing the context, and again, we'll continue to discuss, because there are going to be holes, and there are so many questions that do not yet have concrete answers on all of this, and the taxation, the nature of the kind of employees that they will or will not be, or whether they will even be employees at all, is something that has yet to be settled under this current settlement structure and payment structure. It is just the basic bones of the agreement, and they'll work until, what we said, at no sooner than 2025 is when you'll start to see this stuff obviously work through. So we'll take more of your phone calls on it, because it's going to continue to carry discussion. Coach Dave McGinnis is going to be here. The second hour is coming up next.
Kalen DeBoer.
It is 11:02. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Major news in the world of college athletics as the NCAA and its power conferences are moving towards a settlement in 3 pending federal antitrust cases. The settlement reportedly includes a revenue-sharing agreement that would allow Power 5 schools to share up to about $20 million a year with athletes. In college baseball, the SEC tournament continues in Hoover, Tennessee, able to bounce back yesterday with a 7-4 win over A&M. Vanderbilt moved past Mississippi State last night with a 4-3 win. Tennessee takes on Miss State tonight at 6:30 in an elimination game. Vandy awaits the winner of that matchup on Saturday. The SEC championship game happens Sunday in Hoover. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What's happening? Welcome in on this Friday, hour number 2. We are reacting to the news last night, a little before 7 p.m. Central Time. The NCAA 5 power conferences agreeing to allow schools to directly pay players for the first time in the history of college sports. You guys have been very interested in this topic. Thank God that I'm here to save you from Lucas's guard talk.
We're going to talk about the guard.
Because he tried to get me to do a whole Peter Skoronski thing on May the 24th.
The guard is important.
The guard doesn't even have pads on.
We just heard from the guard. The guard is talking to us about all the weight he had to gain in the offseason because of his appendectomy.
I'm not doing the guard talk yet. All right? This is a much more interesting story, and it's actual news. Calm down. Jackson and Lucas are making it happen. Lucas, I think, just popped a blood vessel trying to scream guard as loud as humanly possible into the microphone. And you guys have the ability to call in 615-737-1045. The number, or interact on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And thanks for hanging out with us there. We are going to continue our team-by-team preview, continuing specifically with teams on the Titans' schedule, because there's a lot of interesting storylines about the Miami Dolphins. That is the one Titans primetime opponent, so we'll do that at some point here in just a second. But I do think that people have a lot of opinions on this and are pointing out all kind of different questions that we may not necessarily have the answers to yet on this NCAA decision, on this collegiate athletic decision. But we will continue to have more information as it becomes available. And I think that people have a lot of questions that can help us sprout this off in different directions as a conversation. So we'll see what Keith, who's a driver, has to say about this particular story. Hey, Keith.
All right. Listen, I think that any conversation or any argument that starts with tuition being compensation is already fatally flawed, because it overlooks the number one requirement in recruiting. That is, if I want to, let's say, play football at the University of Tennessee, I got to first be a student at the University of Tennessee. So if you come to my house and recruit me to come play, you got to satisfy that requirement first. That's the scholarship. That allows me to play football. I don't have to pay when you came to approach me to play football at the University of Tennessee. So that's never going to be compensation. That's just something that allows the student, that allows the university to have you play for them to begin with. So anybody talking about compensation, it may sound good if you save your parents some money, but there are companies that give tuition reimbursement. That saves you money too. That's not the same thing.
Thanks for pointing that out, Keith. It's an important clarification, because that underlying thought is something that they still have to work through. Are these students or are these employees? Because it seems like their plan, based on the messaging and the statement that we read from the Notre Dame president in the first hour, it sounds like their plan is to make sure that that athletes are still classified as students. But can you be a student while also being employees? Now, the answer is yes, because there's structures for jobs all over campus where that's indeed the case. You're working at your local convenience store in your dorm quad or something. You're working at the gym.
I worked for VFL Films
on campus
and was compensated for working SEC Network Plus games in the control room while being a student.
So there are some hurdles that are difficult. There are some that are very much not. But that kind of structure is something that they have to determine, because I assume they want to keep the title of student athlete in place, but we're moving further and further away from these athletes needing the student athlete hyphenated situation. Morgan works in supply chain up next.
Hey, Buck, it's Manning Morgan, by the way. Good to talk to you.
Hey, bud.
It's been a while. Hey, man. So I hear that I hear the comment about the tax structure and stuff. A lot of times I think that's a little silly. Like, you're going to make money in the United States, you're going to get taxed. I do ask that maybe if a tax-free state like Tennessee is potentially a benefit to that. But I think I take that one step further. When you're talking about paying a student, if they're they're an employee of the school, I think this is going to be more of a problem with Title IX than it is of anything, because how do you distribute those payments in a way that is not discriminatory to potential sports that don't make as much money? So that's kind of my takeaway. And then, hey, on another note, I've been following you along through your gym endeavors. I got to give you kudos on the work you've been putting in there. You look great, man. But I'll hang up and see what you got to say to that.
Thanks very much for the call, Manning. We appreciate it. No, not that Manning. The Manning I went to high school with.
I respect it, Jackson.
Bev Davenport lives on.
So, yes, Title IX.
Yeah, still a thing.
Well, they keep telling me it's still a thing, but the actions over the history of collegiate athletics has been,
Well, no, there are a lot of things in place, like the idea of having as many women's sports as men's sports. But Title IX doesn't mean, and he brings up the issue of the difference in pay. Like, the women's basketball coach at Tennessee Coach Caldwell is not making more than Rick Barnes, because revenue has to do with it, right? TV revenue, economics all play a part in who gets paid a higher salary. Rick Barnes doesn't make the salary Josh Heupel does, because football generates far more than men's basketball. So Title IX doesn't mean men's and women's basketball coaches all have to be paid evenly. It is about opportunity, and the same amount of opportunity that student athletes and coaches get in both sports, to where you don't have 7 men's sports and 3 women's sports.
Sure, by the letter of the law. But how strictly have institutions followed the letter of the law on Title IX? There are Title IX infractions every year that we talk
absolutely,
about.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my point with how seriously have they already been treating it, and are we seeing it pushed even further outside of the realm of, I don't want to say viability, because it shouldn't just be viable, it should be vital to make sure that those opportunities are preserved. And I want to make sure that I'm clear on that. Title IX, in the not just the spirit, but by the letter of the law, needs to have some way to be preserved here. But it's going to be financially difficult to do. And you're going to see some levels of institutions not have all of the programs that they have had under the previous construct and the financial model. It's just not going to be viable. Now, and again, I'll read the statement for the Notre Dame president. The settlement, though undesirable, talking about the NCAA, the Board of Governors, and the leaders from the ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, SEC, and Pac-12 voting to accept the general terms of a payment structure for schools to directly pay players. The settlement, though undesirable in many respects and promising only temporary stability, is necessary to avoid what would be the bankruptcy of college athletics. To save the great American institution of college sports, Congress must pass legislation that will preempt the current patchwork of state laws, establish that our athletes are not employees. But again, we're talking through that right now. You can very easily. But students seeking college degrees, and provide protection from further antitrust lawsuits that will allow colleges to make and enforce rules that will protect our student athletes and help ensure competitive equity among our teams. Now, your job is to protect them. You have to protect them. But I don't think that you get to decide what they earn their degree in necessarily. If there is an athlete that wants to be a student at your institution, but their primary focus is, I'm here for sports, even if you don't consider it viable, I don't think that the institution should get to tell you that that's not a viable path of or pursuit of higher education here, of higher athletic education. I think you're going to work through some red tape on that.
And how the money gets divvied up is going to be fascinating. Like, there are schools that will want to direct some NIL money to women's basketball, right? We've seen what's happened with women's basketball recently, but how does Duke handle this? Where for Duke, the basketball program is more important. I would be curious to see the revenue numbers between Duke football and Duke basketball. Just curious. Duke basketball, I'm sure, does better with partnerships, and obviously attendance is not an issue, but it's a very small arena. Duke football is going to hold more people, more ticket sales. So would Duke say, no, let's try to amp up the revenue on the football side where the ceiling is obviously so much higher in the ACC, or is Duke still going all in on basketball? I don't know. Does Alabama try? And then you have coaches kind of out here campaigning for more of that revenue money for their respective program. Do some programs get totally screwed where there are cuts made even? Not only do you not get any of this money, no, we got to make cuts to make room. You don't get that new soccer facility because we got to make room to pay this $20 million to football athletes. So every school is going to have to prioritize things differently, and that's going to be a very interesting process and one that I'm not envious of when it comes to athletic directors.
So I'm sure Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio has thoughts on this particular subject, so we'll get to those as well as some Titans and NFL talk coming up next. The Tennessee Men's Clinic is here to help you if you are like so many guys who deal with erectile dysfunction at various points in your life. It's okay. Don't freak out. Don't be super negative about it. Just make sure that you have the best support system in place. And that, for the last decade here in Middle Tennessee, has been the Tennessee Men's Clinic. They're here to help guys who are dealing not just with ED, but who are also striving to lose weight. Their ED and weight loss treatments truly change lives. And specific to ED, the reality is that pills often quit working and guys start making excuses for not going to bed. And there's a lot of dudes that hate going to the doctor, but the Tennessee Men's Clinic was created in 2014 to make the process specific to you and to make it as comfortable for you as humanly possible, because no one-size treatment fits all. For a decade, the urologist and providers at the Tennessee Men's Clinic have helped guys with ED and weight loss, and they now even offer aesthetic enhancements and cosmetic procedures. So stop thinking about it and call them today at 615-208-9090. That's 615-208-9090, or go online to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com and book an appointment today. Coach Mack is here. That means it's a Friday. Vibes are high. Of course, his visits with us and every show on the station is presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer, tworiversford.com. For more information, Mac, I don't know if I assume you saw the news that came out last night about the NCAA and the Power 5 agreeing to have schools pay players. I didn't know if you had some initial reaction to that or not, given your connection to not just the pro world, but the college world as well.
Yeah, well, it's a Power 4 now, really, right? I mean, and that's what they're doing. Yeah, you knew that was coming. I mean, you knew that was coming because, especially with this litigation that's getting ready to be solved for $2.7 billion. They didn't want it to go to court, for players in arrears getting money for name, image, likeness. If they'd have gone to court, they said that they could have lost up to treble damages of $20 billion. So it's a changing world, Buck. I'm absolutely very familiar with it. Of course, got a lot of guys that are my really good friends that are coaching in college ball at all different levels, and it's a different world for them, Buck.
Do you ever talk to them, Mac? And obviously not asking for specific people or examples, but like the idea that you're going out on some of these recruiting visits and how the money gets involved with it. These athletes, some of them at the highest levels, are being offered more money than the actual assistant coaches or the people on the recruiting staff are making. That's not an easy dynamic to kind of work through, one would imagine.
Well, yeah, but they're going to have to work through it. I mean, you've got the same dynamics in professional football. Yeah. The only difference in professional football is that there is a collective bargaining agreement, and those things are tiered. But look, you can get paid what people are willing to pay you, what the market will bear, and it's gonna get now. Once they put the payments under the auspices of the universities, that will change a little bit for a little bit more regulation. But it's a fast changing world. The guys that are really hurting, Buck, are the smaller schools, because basically what they've become is feeder schools for the other ones. Because now with the transfer portal, I mean, you can take a guy. It's much easier to vet a guy, that's 20 years old or 18 or 19 that's had 2 years of experience, rather than vetting a 17 and 18-year-old out of high school and trying to project him, to the next level. So it's a different stage that they're in now, and it's only going to get, it's going to get even more strange.
So, Coach, it seems like the gap will just continue to widen, right? As obviously the bigger schools, the Power 5 or Power 4 schools, will have more revenue to pay student athletes with, and it feels like that gap continues to widen. Do you think there could be, and we're already seeing some of this in terms of Group of 5 and Power 5, and as you said, those players moving on, do you think we could see some sort of trickle-up effect in scouting departments in the NFL with not as much devoted to Group of 5 schools or conferences as this gap continues to widen?
No, you're still going to have to vet the players coming up, because, the transfer portal, with as many transfers as they can make, you still want to know, who the players are, regardless of where they are. No, you're still gonna vet all of the players, because the National Football League, I mean, they run deep as far as being able to vet players, and so you're really not trying to project where they might be, but you do want to get background on them, and background starts very, very early. I don't see that changing at all.
So we'll pivot with Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio, because obviously OTAs have been going on this week. They had practice on Monday, Tuesday, and I believe, Mac, you guys were out there yesterday on Thursday, correct?
Yes, correct.
So with that, we have the rookies. We have them mixing with the vets for the first time. The competition on the roster has been fun to watch. We only got the one day, so they were missing some parts and pieces that I think people are curious about, including L'Jarius Sneed and Jeff Simmons and Harold Landry on the day that we were out there to physically take in practice. But what have you made of the wide receivers and the defensive backs and the way that they've been working together through the early phases?
Well, I mean, and I'm glad that you prefaced all of this by early phases. Look, this is still voluntary. And people, as long as this has been in place, people still, have a real hard time keeping their powder dry over the voluntary part of it.
Sure.
All of these guys are doing something. They know, especially the veterans, they know when they've got to come in. They know what they have to do. There's too much money at stake not to be ready to come in. And so you don't really concern yourself. They know where everybody is. They know absolutely where everybody is, and I can tell you that with impunity, because I talked to them, but I did it. I know they know where their guys are. So the guys that are working that you watch, they're getting technique work. But this being a new staff, and especially for younger players coming into it, they're not only learning the nuances of what the National Football League is as an entity, then they've got to learn the specifics of this building, before they're coming into. So, it's all important. I've spent most of my time with Bill Callahan. In fact, near the whole time watching him. His individual work is fascinating to watch. But that attention to detail is gonna pay big dividends. And he asked me yesterday. He said, "What do you see now?" And I said they're getting better at the techniques that you're teaching. I said, they're starting to grasp it. And so that's important. That is a development. I think the two biggest developments on this football team, everything's important, Buck. You didn't ask me this question, but I'm going to tell you, is the quarterback, is the development of the quarterback, and then the development of the offensive line. And that's what I'm going to be watching really close.
Well, and it's been cool to see you taking that in and kind of providing some additional context to the audience, because he's got a lot of different parts and pieces out there that are very technique specific for that group to work with that even I'm not accustomed to seeing, Mac, after covering an NFL team for 8 years. It's a very very specific style of training these offensive linemen. Of course, that's what he's renowned for and reputed to have done in every stop that he's been in. So that should be no surprise. But I do find it interesting how specific the equipment is to those individual techniques.
Yeah, he developed that equipment and put a patent on it and sold it to a company and gets royalties off of it. But it's unique. I was out there yesterday, and there's a lot of high school coaches out there that Jack Corey had in his program out there. And if you just you walk over and look at it, and then all of a sudden you start to understand the dynamics of it and what it takes to move it. And the reason that he's got it built like he does to simulate the height and the angle that a defensive lineman is coming off on you, when you're down in your stance and before the ball is snapped, it's pretty fascinating to watch. The other one is the 5-pad circle thing he's got that's really cool to watch him work on it too. So when you're back out there, get over there and spend some time. I know there's not a lot of balls spinning through the air when you're watching the offensive line, but there's a lot of teaching going on.
No, and certainly that's as important as anything for this organization to get back on track after the way that it's hindered them in the last couple of years. Coach Dave McGinnis here with us.
Yeah, that and the talent pool. They're increasing the talent pool. I'll tell you a real quick story, and I don't think I'm talking out of turn, but because I'm out there all the time. But the bad storm that we had rolling in, on Wednesday.
Yeah.
The bad storm. Well, of course, they're working over there on Oakland, Bertha. That's over with, and this is common. That I found out is that they look out the window. Puff and Kaylee look out the window, and this storm's rolling in, and it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock. Now, who is that out there still over there on those dummies and look? They on those machines, and they look, and it's J.C. Latham. So Kaylee, being the smart one of those two, she says, somebody needs to go tell him we got a storm coming in. There's lightning coming. And so, Puff finally, she pesters him enough. He goes down and says, "Hey, you need to come in. There's lightning. You need to get off the field." And he told Puff, he said, "No, I'm quicker than lightning. I need to work on this." And so he comes back up and tells her that. She refuses. Of course, she refuses to accept it. She's still watching, and she said, "No, we've got to get him off of there." And so they go down to get Rand. Rand finally has to go out there, when it's starting to rain, in the rain, and say, "JC, get inside. That's enough." But he does that every day.
Well, and I know that Jimmy Wyatt talked to him about that too, and that was where I was heading next, Mac, because I saw the one where they had you mic'd up and watching him work through the offensive line drills, and your commentary was about how stark the improvement was just from day one to day two, working on those sleds and improving the technique. It's something that I think Titans fans are gratified to hear because they know how important it is, and he knows how to hear that he also understands how important it is that he succeed at that position.
In a big way. I mean, he's approaching it right. I mean, the first thing you've got to do, and Rand talked about, that one of the first criteria is people that guys or players that they're going to bring in here that love football. Well, that's the epitome of it there. That's what you need because, your shelf life is short in the National Football League in the relative business world, and so you need to take advantage of everything. This guy's got the right mindset, I tell you that. Plus, he's blessed with a lot of athletic ability, and his size and movement for a guy that size is pretty special.
Well, and Coach, running behind J.C. Latham in that line, of course, are Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. And it was interesting to hear Brian Callahan and his presser say that that's the group he's probably most excited about on the offensive side are the two running backs. And it feels like all we've done since they signed Pollard has been talk about how similar those two are and how you could do the same things and how interchangeable they are. And that's certainly true. But also, how are they different, Coach? How could they be utilized in different ways?
Well, I think first of all, the similarities is that they're both similar sized backs, and they're both jump cut backs. They're both vertical backs, that can stick a foot in the ground and take off. But they both have the ability to run real pass routes from a variety of formations. Okay, and now the difference is one is more of a veteran than the other one. That's the biggest difference, because you can't manufacture experience in this business. But when I watched those guys work, in the individual, I was very interested to see, how they were going to work together. And I tell you, something that's fun to watch is watch both of them compete in those individual drills. That's when you've got your roster layered correctly. That's when the first two guys that are doing the drills are competing against one another.
Well, it's just an exciting possibility for a couple of different reasons, Mac. But when you talk about running backs who understand the concept of route running and who can add some diversity to the route tree, I'm reminded of just recently here, Dontrell Hilliard, and how much his ability to understand landmarks and spacing and his route craft allowed them to do more where there weren't that many passing options due to injury and other things that they were dealing with at the time.
Well, what that does, though, as a lifetime defensive coach, I can tell you that puts a real strut on a defensive coordinator, because now personnel matchups, as you guys both know, and so does our audience, personnel matchups are everything in the National Football League. They can get into a variety of formations, and now you're challenging the defense to match personnel, not knowing what type of attack you're coming with.
So we haven't talked about the quarterback, and we obviously came back from practice on Tuesday with some observations about it, or the quarterbacks plural, because of course Mason Rudolph brought in free agency, and Malik Willis. Initial impressions from the group of them and your takeaways, either differences that you're noticing in mechanics or the different drills that they're training them on from a previous staff. What have been your observations from the quarterbacks?
Yeah, they've got different drills, and of course, that's Brian Callahan, and that's his wheelhouse. That's his wheelhouse, and so the development of those guys, through the offensive coordinator, but through Callahan, that's why he got this job, because he could work with and develop quarterbacks, and also could tailor the offense to what the quarterback strengths were. So it's been a lot of fun to watch. I tell you one thing, those guys. Look, Will Levis has got the faith of his football team behind him because of the way he works and the way he interacts. And again, we're early into OTAs. You know me. I've been at this long enough. I'm not going to name anybody all Metro right here. In talking about in May football.
Sure.
But I know that Will Levis has what it takes, and now he's got a chance to develop under a guy that's been his career. That's why he's gotten a head coach job at this young age, is because of his ability to communicate, to work with, and develop quarterbacks. We
talked to DeAndre Hopkins on the day that we were out there, Mac, and it has to be a coach's dream, every coach's dream, to hear a veteran player like that, especially one who's had the career like Hopkins, say, no, it's not just about, how much I enjoy working with these guys. It's about how much I enjoy competing with another number one wide receiver, a guy who has been a number one wide receiver in Calvin Ridley, and having that elevated level of competition to drive me even further.
Well, yeah, look, those two guys. First of all, D-Hop is everything and more that I thought he was when he came in here. I thought he did a marvelous job last year. And when you visit with him and sit and talk with him, I've been fortunate in my career. You know how many great players I've been around. But the way the approach of the game is, D-Hop is all of that. He is all of that. He is a pro. And I tell you what, it didn't take long for that locker room, even last season, to start following him. Now you start adding Ridley in there. You added Tyler Boyd in there. It's going to be fun to watch during training camp, Buck, I promise you.
The competition up and down that group, Mac, because, I know Brian Callahan has talked about how excited he is to incorporate Traylon Burks into what they're trying to do. I know he did Lawan and Compton's podcast here this week and was saying, the coaching staff has taken as basically a personal mission to find a role to make sure that they can devise a specific role or the most effective role for what Traylon's skill set is, because we know that he's incredibly gifted. That's why he was a first-round pick.
Yeah, and it's up to him. It's up to him. I mean, he's in an ideal situation. He's in an ideal situation not only to soak information from some really, truly great veteran players, but this is a staff that is wanting to put him in a position to be successful. And, and for whatever reasons, and most of it has been injury, that is not, it's not anybody's fault when you get injured. It really isn't. But the fact that you miss time, all of a sudden, then your clock starts running on you. And so everything that is ahead of him is up to him because everything is in place for him to develop.
He's Coach Dave McGinnis. He's the main man. His visits are presented by Two Rivers Ford, and hopefully he's getting away for Memorial Day weekend. Mac, thanks for doing it. We appreciate it, buddy.
I'm down here on Rosemary Beach getting ready to go into big bad breakfast right here.
What are you doing this radio interview if you're on the beach, Mac? Go enjoy your vacation.
I already got a table, and so we got a group of guys down here that they're on a table. I'm never going to shun what you guys are doing. I did walk out in the parking lot and help somebody because they were driving off with their Bloody Mary on the hood of their truck, and I stopped and said, "You might want to get this before you get out on the highway."
Important.
What kind of a beach goer is Coach Mac? Are you still dressed in black on the beach? Are you a get up and walk around? Are you a lay out kind of guy?
Coach Mac used to be a lifeguard in his.
I did not know that.
No,
Mac, we didn't cover that when you joined my Inside Zone podcast last summer to detail the life of Coach Mac.
I got a picture of Coach Mac lifeguard that I'll show you guys sometimes. They used it on Hard Knocks when I was on it.
Oh my God!
And then I told them that's it. Give me the picture back, and that's
it. Forever documented on HBO. Coach Dave McGinnis, the man, the myth, the legends. Thanks for doing it, Mac.
Yeah, see you guys.
That's the main man, Coach Mac.
I like how he did not answer my question.
He sure as hell didn't.
I was a lifeguard.
He's going to show us the picture, so apparently we'll see what kind of lifeguard.
I would love to see that.
He was. Coach Mac, always on duty. He really should have told us to kick rocks.
Yeah.
Like, I absolutely would have told us to kick rocks. He's a better man than any of us. All right, so we'll get back to your phone calls. In fact, you need the phone number because we have things to give away. What are you waving me off for? What's wrong?
Nothing. Just keep going.
Okay, 615-737-1045. I told you not to communicate with me with hand signals. We talked about this. There was a meeting.
Seamless.
615-737-1045 is the number. You know why you need that number? Because you're going to call in here and you're going to make our day, all right? You're going to give us a little positivity. You're going to give us your Friday fire, the thing that made you feel good this week. I don't think it has to be in sports. Branch out. Where did you get the feel good? Make us feel positive about what this week has been. 615-737-1045 is the number. What's wrong?
You're not even telling them what we're going to give away.
I was just about to
do that. You take too long to get to these things.
It's a 3-hour radio show.
Def Leppard and Journey are at Nissan Stadium July 20th.
What about the chicken?
A pair of tickets to see Def Leppard and Journey at Nissan Stadium July 20th. Thanks to our Window Nation ticket window. The best submission gets a pair of tickets to that show. And also, the runner-up gets the Feed Your Flock Hattie B's catered combo.
The real prize.
Yes. Yeah, the real prize. You decide. How about that? The winner decides what they want more.
No, we're not going to overcomplicate
this. The chicken,
no.
Or the concert. Either way, 615-737-1045. You'll win something if you have a good submission.
See how quickly he makes your life harder after having to not deal with this stuff anymore, Jackson? That transition, him turning slowly into me, which is delightful, and then him putting more work on you, which is even better, has been just a joy for me.
I feel like a werewolf.
It's been the only...
Start having these convulsions. Get out of my studio.
It's the only positive that I've been able to take away from being infringed upon in here. Friday Fire's next. That's right. 11:45 on the dot on a Friday. Give us your Friday Fire. 615-737-1045 is the number. We'll rattle through them here in just a second. Lucas, what is first place win?
First place wins a pair of tickets to go see Journey as well as Def Leppard at Nissan Stadium this summer. Second place wins arguably the better prize, and that is free Hattie B's hot chicken with the Feed Your Flock pack.
It's not even arguable. It is clearly the superior prize. We just ordered Hattie B's during the commercial break. We're very excited about it. You can do that as well via the app. All right. So, our Friday Fire, I'll start. I am going to go just simply with the ruling and the settlement between the NCAA and the Power Five that we've been talking about all day. I think this is excellent. Now, it's just the first step. These are a variety of incremental steps, though they feel huge in the landscape of college athletics. We really are just scratching the surface of what this needs to be. And there's a reason for that, because it has been years of collegiate athletes not being paid what they're worth. And I'm not even going to say that I appreciate the argument of, well, they're getting their education, that's payment enough. No, it is actually not enough. It is not. They are worth more than the education, than the value of the education that they are receiving. So that we are getting closer and closer to having a more balanced model, and that it is benefiting the people that it should have been benefiting the entire time, which is the people who are tasked with our entertainment and enjoyment, the athletes first and foremost. That, I don't think I could find a more positive story than this being something that the NCAA and the institutions are going to allow the schools to directly pay the players, as they should have done from the jump.
A good submission by you. My Friday Fire is Sean Payton. So, do you remember what Mike Vrabel called the veteran free agent guys that the Titans were picking up along the way in that injury-riddled seasons plural, I guess, and helping out the Deontay Foremans of the world, the Mario Williams of the world.
Titans legend, but not Mario Williams. Mario Edwards.
Mario Williams.
No, Mario Williams did a lot of damage to the Titans over the years.
Mario Edwards. Buster Screen, who seems to be going to prison soon.
Still running.
Okay. So, do you remember what...
You weren't even here for that joke.
No, he was using it the other day. Do you remember what Vrabel called those guys?
Stray Cats.
Well, we have a new name. But not for veteran free agents, for young quarterbacks, as Sean Payton has called his Broncos quarterback group the Orphan Dogs. Jackson, do we have the audio of Sean Payton saying that and then quarterbacks reacting?
Orphan dog, what kind of dog would you be?
Ooh, I'm a husky guy. I like huskies. Got a couple huskies at home.
I'm not ready for the mean responses if we put it to a poll. What kind of dog would Zach Wilson be if he was an orphan dog? But Jarrett Stidham
One that likes moms.
Jarrett Stidham was the first quarterback. Yeah, what's the most like a poodle? Jarrett Stidham was the first quarterback that you heard, and then Zach Wilson the second. So Sean Payton calling his QBs orphan dogs is my Friday Fire.
It's so disrespectful. What's your Friday Fire, Jackson?
How familiar are you two with the game Wheel of Fortune?
Very, but
Not
apparently
very.
I'm the only one. How you have not? Okay, go ahead.
So, Lucas, how familiar are you? You said you're not familiar.
I've never sat and watched an episode of Wheel of Fortune.
Wild.
For those of you who are not familiar, Wheel of Fortune, obviously there's a phrase, there's a few letters that are, and then you get to try to solve the puzzle. And so this guy had like a T, an S, a B, and a couple of other letters, but this was the answer that he came up with on Wheel of Fortune last night.
A little loud.
Also, apologies to the streaming audience because that Disney definitely has the price or the Wheel of Fortune music copyrighted. So you guys don't get to hear that. I am not trying to have Mickey Mouse outside the door.
No, that's they're very litigious. The mouse, you cannot mess with that. You play that audio. Wait.
Don't get too distracted by the Mickey Mouse sound. We have calls to take.
Pull it as a drop now. What the hell was that?
Move on. We got things to do.
What was worse, the Canadian accent or that?
No, that was delightful. He has to talk like Mickey Mouse for the rest of the show. Every time he has these voices, he's holding out on me. This is a thing that play-by-play people do. It's why they change their voice to sound like more professional broadcasters anyway. I know what's hiding down there.
Take some damn calls.
Oh, Pat Sajak, though, the disgust in his voice.
What? Right in the butt, everybody.
No,
what?
He goes, it's almost like the Moody Moses thing where you just hear Reese Davis spitting Moses Moody at the end of it. Pat Sajak just goes, no. Jimmy is a music officer. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm interested. Hey, Jimmy.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Not much.
I run the music office for the state of Tennessee, which basically means that I help communities around the state use music as an economic development tool.
Awesome. Love that. We appreciate your service.
Thank you. I spent 30 years in record label hell, so it's a nice change of pace. So my Friday Fire, 6 years ago, first of all, how sports can transform a person, a young person especially. 6 years ago, I thought my son was going to be gone. He was lost, basically. Last night, his now 8-year-old son won his Little League championship by hitting a 3-run double for his team that my son now coaches. Now, I'm excited for my grandson for winning the championship, of course, but I was more excited for my son who has come a million miles from where he was 6 years ago, and being able to coach and do it well, and having parents come up to me and say how impressed they were with him has done a lot for me and my wife, and obviously for my son. So that's my Friday Fire.
Awesome. Thank you. Stay on hold, Jimmy. We will get back with you here in just a second.
Hard to beat that one.
Yeah, that's a tough one to try and match. Alan, who's in car sales, is going to follow it. Go ahead, Alan.
Hey, Buck. How you doing today?
Good.
Well, my Friday Fire is, I'm in car sales right now because 12 years ago I graduated from college with a degree in education, but couldn't find a job. Got into car sales, and I accidentally let my teaching license expire. Well, I'm ready to get into the classroom now. And last Friday, I took the test needed to be able to get my license back. It is a test, 120 questions over all of human history. And I got my score back. I passed and had a job interview yesterday, and I got offered a job to teach 9th grade world history. And I accepted it, and I'm ready to get to the classroom and help some young people.
Hell yes.
That is my Friday Fire.
Hell yeah.
Let's
go, Alan. Oh, my God. Look at this. Strong submissions on a Friday. Now, does this just say Miss White? Is that correct?
That is what I was told over the phone, or I think.
Very good. Hello?
Miss White, what you got?
Oh,
God.
but I was in a place where...
Yeah, I got nothing. It sounds like. No. Well, were we in her cup holder?
I don't think she was ready.
Where were we rattling around? Okay. Well, since we have 2 incredible submissions and 2 prizes to give away, Jackson, how do you want to distribute this? Whose story is... Which is the better prize? We need to determine that first.
I think Jimmy's was so good. I think Jackson, just ask Jimmy which one he wants.
So Jimmy, because Jimmy wins, he gets to pick first place, and then Alan will get to pick, or we'll get to have the prize that's left.
Chicken or concert tickets?
The chicken is great. I love the chicken. Hattie B's is excellent chicken.
What would you choose? Journey / Def Leppard or chicken?
No, chicken in a heartbeat.
I think I'd go chicken.
I'd get so much more out of chicken.
Maybe in 1982 my answer would be different, but today I'm going chicken.
That's like 15 years before you're born.
Yes.
What, in 1982?
13 years.
Okay, very good. We'll make him do more Mickey Mouse accents next. Jesus.
You play that audio? It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. Major news in the world of college athletics as the NCAA and its power conferences are moving towards a settlement in 3 pending federal antitrust cases. The settlement reportedly includes a revenue-sharing agreement that would allow Power 5 schools to share up to $20 million a year with athletes. College baseball, the SEC tournament continues in Hoover. Tennessee bounced back a 7-4 win over A&M Thursday. Vanderbilt beating Mississippi State 4-3. So it's Tennessee versus Miss State tonight at 6:30 in an elimination game. Winner moves on to play Vandy on Saturday. Tonight in the NHL, Panthers are at the Rangers. It's game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Panthers lead 1-0. And in the NBA, the Timberwolves host the Mavericks. Game 2 in the West, and Dallas has a 1-0 lead. Nashville Soccer Club heads north on Saturday to face Montreal in an Eastern Conference battle. The Boys in Gold beat Montreal 4-1 just 2 weeks ago at Geodis Park. Kickoff set for 6:30. Pregame coverage on The Zone begins at 6. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is upon us on this Friday. Morale is through the roof. Thanks for hanging out here with us. Jackson, Lucas, and me. Going to have our buddy Cam Wolfe from the NFL Network join us here in just a second. We'll take a look around the NFL at some OTAs, get his thoughts on the Titans because they fall within his region. Cam does the Southeastern teams for the NFL Network, and I know he has some thoughts. We were texting back and forth about Will Levis just a couple of days ago. So he'll join us here in about 20 minutes. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. We'd be happy to have you. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch is where you can live stream the show and interact in the F&M Bank chat if you're so inclined. If you're hanging out on YouTube today, please throw a like on the video. We've been talking about this story all day long, and I've successfully fought off the guard talk. But there is a big overarching question that I have about the immediate of collegiate athletics. So, if you're unfamiliar with the story, I'll run you through the basics again. The NCAA, what was the Power 5, but is, as Coach Mack said, kind of the Power 4 now, even though the voting block for the Pac-12 still counts as the Pac-12. So the Power 5, they agreed that players can be paid in collegiate sports directly from schools. That's the summary. That's the 1,000-foot view. Now, there is a cap on how much of the finances are going to be distributed to member institutions in the revenue sharing process, $22 million per school. There is also a settlement in the House versus NCAA case that will pay out more than $2.7 billion additional dollars in damages over 10 years to past and current athletes. ESPN reporting on that as well. They will start paying athletes who were in collegiate athletics as recently as 2016 up until present day. Why 2016 specifically? I haven't seen reported on to date, but I'm sure there's a reason, and I'm sure we will find out more information shortly.
Statute of limitations in place. I'm just not sure exactly why that time frame.
Okay, so that works. Now, the biggest overarching question about all of this, because it's just that a framework has been agreed upon and a figure has been agreed upon to pay out as far as the damages. We haven't gotten the rest of the information or the rest of the structure for how this thing is actually going to work, nor do they have to have it until such time as they're ready to implement it, which would not be before 2025 right now. But in the immediate, are we just going to move forward with the current construct? Because this is a pretty chaotic environment that we're presently in. So it's not like this is an immediate solution, an immediate payout, and an immediate guardrail for what name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal and the finances of athletes are currently all caught up in the middle of. Does this provide immediate stability to college athletics? Because I think my answer is no.
So let's imagine that college athletics is a house being built right now. And the second floor of the house is a stable, organized construct that everybody is on board with, right? The second floor. We've been on the first floor, which is messy. There's boxes everywhere. And the ladder from the first floor to the second floor has been made of twigs, like the most unstable, worst possible way to get from a first floor to a second floor, that you step on it and it'll break and you'll go down and you'll break your forearm or something. This is finally taking that ladder and throwing it into the dumpster and starting to build a staircase, but you've only built the first step. Like, you can step on it and it's stability when you're standing on that first step, but you can't get up to that second floor until the rest of the staircase is built.
Right, you're just standing on one step looking upwards.
Exactly.
And that's how this should be. They don't know all the different ways that this is going to be impacting specifically the college athletes, but for the immediate, it's not impacting anything immediately. What this story is that in the future, these will be the rules under which the finances are divvied out, in which the employment situation of the athletes, if such, actual term is used for the athletes, employee is a part of it, as opposed to student athlete. Are you a student employee? Are you an athlete employee? What is the new designation? Is there a new designation? And how hard are you going to fight against the idea of students that are paid specifically for sports, as opposed to lumping all students at a university together, saying, no, you're here to pursue a diploma. Okay, well, what if my diploma is in basketball as opposed to political science? And I'm choosing your university with which to pursue my diploma in, I don't know, sports education and sports administration or entertainment law or whatever. But that's my minor. My major here is basketball, and I've chosen that as my major, and that's the way that I'm going to pursue my opportunities here. If it doesn't pan out for the athletes, they do run that risk. And there have to be those kind of guardrails in place to protect, those who don't make it to the professional ranks, because it is the top 1% of the top 1%. It's already very selective as far as college athletics go.
My question is, what does the NCAA look like as a governing body moving forward? Like, okay,
they don't have that answer either.
NCAA violation. What is an NCAA violation 5 years from now when we have revenue sharing? Because remember, this isn't immediate. Like we talked about it. There is so much that has to happen. This is simply that an agreement for a settlement is in place and both sides are kind of agreeing to it in theory, and they're announcing that. They got to move forward in court. It has to be certified. It has to be implemented. And there are so many guardrails and legalese that needs to be figured out along the way before this even comes close to being implemented, which could be 2025, 2026. So 5, 6, 7 years from now, what is an NCAA violation? Because the NCAA, as we've known it, is dead, but that doesn't mean the NCAA is dead, because this is the NCAA actually evolving in some way. Evolving because there's a gun to their head and say, okay, evolve, or we go to court and you're due $20 billion and you go under.
No, evolve, or we pull the trigger and you bleed out.
That's what I'm saying, like quite literally. So the NCAA obviously is being forced to evolve here. So what does an NCAA violation look like in 7 years? Is it still boosters interfering with revenue sharing and those third-party collectives kind of coming in to incentivize pay for play? Or do schools go the direction of, okay, no, the revenue sharing is the pay for play. That's the above board stuff, and the NIL stuff can be used as it was intended for once guys get to campus, and then opportunities expand beyond that. But is that a little naive to think it's just going to seamlessly work that way? When schools continue to compete and be competitive, and the revenue sharing is going to go up. It's not going to be $22 million a year for 15 years. Like, TV money is going to go up, so that percentage is going to go up.
And I don't mean to be cliche, but nothing in any realm of business is seamless, like truly seamless. So there are going to be mix-ups. There are going to be infractions. There are going to be things that the NCAA does wrong in this, and there's going to be things that go wrong with the athletes, with their representation in the name, image, and likeness space. And the thing that you have to get right, though, is the employment status and the payments that are coming directly from the school to the athlete. That is the thing that you have to get right, that you have to get the most right, and that you have to get the most right the quickest, based on the legal situation. Now, the details of this, because as Lucas said, it's not even that this has been approved, this has been agreed upon, and they haven't even contacted all the necessary parties. By the end of the week, the parties plan to alert Wilken, who apparently is presiding over this situation.
Yeah, in California.
Presided over the most impactful antitrust cases of the past decade. They will submit final details to the court in the next 30 days about people who are pursuing, who want to join the pending antitrust case or who are opting out of a separate antitrust case to try and join the main case to make sure that they get a piece of this. So if Wilken approves those details in the preliminary hearing, which is likely to occur not until July, the plaintiff's lawyers will publish a website and distribute a notice to all players explaining the potential benefits of remaining in the class and options for objecting or opting out. So that's on the class action suit of this. That's on the $2.7 billion payout beyond just the structure of paying players from the university that has also been agreed upon. Now, the structure, the stability. So this is courtesy of ESPN. Some of the challenges that they have to figure out how to distribute the revenue sharing money in a way that meets the market while complying with Title IX, which we talked about as a huge hurdle in all of this, even though it shouldn't be looked at as a hurdle, though I'm sure some people will consider it one. And whether schools can regain control of the marketplace for college athletes, which has been outsourced during the past 3 years to booster collectives, which pay athletes via name, image, and likeness endorsement deals. So those are the main issues that they're having to work through and overcome. Even getting to this point is not going to be seamless. Working out the details of how this is going to look. Once they agree upon the framework, you're going to assume that you've worked out the majority of the kinks throughout the course of the process, and there still will be some stuff that arises that you cannot foresee at this point. But they're going to be armed with all the information necessary to make this as seamless as humanly possible. But in the meantime, how many wrenches are going to be thrown into the mix? How many additional lawsuits are going to pop up? Is there even the viability for additional lawsuits, given the settlement that the NCAA and the kind of the structure that they put around it? 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the discussion. Cameron Wolfe of the NFL Network is going to join us coming up next. This is the absolute worst time of year to be dealing with nagging joint pain. You can't do the outdoor stuff that you love to do. Don't go through the summer missing out on life. Call QC Kinetics right now and find out how they can use biologics from your own body to give new life to your achy joints. QC's regenerative medicine protocols can restore and repair that damaged tissue with no surgery, no steroids, no drugs, and no downtime. It's the future of medicine, and tens of thousands of QC Kinetics patients around the country are living their best life this year because they made the call. QC medical professionals are under the direction of Dr. Mitchell Shinecup, a former orthopedic surgeon who became a pioneer in regenerative medicine. So call QC Kinetics today for a free consultation at 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. I don't know what keeps Cam Wolfe fueled throughout the course of the offseason because the man is all over the place in OTAs. He's all over the place during the season. It is a ceaseless endeavor, the life of an NFL insider, but he does it well, and he does it well for the NFL Network. He joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. Hey, buddy.
Buck, what's up, my guy?
Nothing. Just trying not to get too over the top about, one open OTA practice the way that everybody has takes flying around about all the different players in the league right now.
Oh, man, my favorite time, mid-May grand takes of who's going to win the Super Bowl and who's the best quarterbacks and everything that is the middle of the off-season of the NFL season.
What has been the biggest, what's the hottest topic? You're in South Florida. You're based in Miami, and we'll talk about what's going on with the Dolphins here in just a second because the Titans have an interest in what's going to happen with Miami in this season, and certainly a lot of people in the NFL have a lot of interest in what's going to happen with Tua's quarterback or the Tua contract situation. But what has been the vibe down there in South Florida around the Dolphins right now?
Yeah, everything around the Dolphins, as it's been really for the last 4 years, is surrounding Tua Tagovailoa. And this offseason in particular, it's the do you pay Tua franchise top 10 quarterback money? And as you would expect, that topic has been incredibly divisive. Tua's due potentially massive $50 million plus dollar extension, and the Dolphins have been clear they've had communication about that deal, but nothing is done yet. And so everybody has their take on whether he's worth it or not, and the injuries and whether he can compete at a top 5 level is something that I think everybody is trying to figure out. But ultimately, the Dolphins will make that final call. Hold on one second.
Cam, do you need to go, buddy?
It's my daughter. I'm sitting home. We got early release day, Buck. These are things that you don't have to worry about, but early release, and my daughter decided she wanted candy in the middle of our radio.
Well, or she might have been taking issue with what you were saying. We'd like to hear her thoughts.
She'd like to pay to, and clearly Dad is advocating against is what I took away from that.
Yeah, multitasking. That's what my off season looks like. But I'm getting her candy as I'm talking more about Tua.
What kind of candy?
I think she just wants anything, any type of candy. She's watching the show that I put on during this period, and I guess they had a piece of candy, and so now she needs a piece of candy. So the life of a 3-year-old.
I can relate.
No, you shut the hell up. You can't relate. Get out of here.
No, I can relate to watching something and seeing candy and then wanting
I thought you were calling me a 3-year-old.
No, relating to the 3-year-old.
Cam Wolfe of the NFL Network.
But that's the core of the topic here. And I think the reality is, every little thing that happens with Tua is dissected. He missed 1 day of OTAs because he played at Nick Saban's golf tournament in Alabama. And everybody's saying, oh, well, he's not good enough to miss a day of OTAs. You got to be this level of good to do such and such. So, everything you would expect from a mid-May quarterback topic is going down here in South Florida.
Well, I guess what do we actually know about the discussions between Tua and the team, Cam? Because that part seems a bit nebulous to me, and that it always any window that fans get to speculate, they'll take advantage of. Certainly with the internet being the way that it is. But what actually is the nature of the dialogue between the two parties working towards that long-term deal? Because he's the last quarterback in his draft class to not be on a second contract.
Yep, and I think that's the core of it. It's time. I don't anticipate a situation where they go into this regular season without Tua getting a new deal. And so it's a little give and take right now. They've exchanged contract offers from what I understand. They've talked for several months now. And, the reality is both sides want to get a deal done primarily at their terms. And so you deal with a quarterback like Tua, guarantees are going to be a big part of it. He's been injured a lot in his career. How much do you give him guaranteed? If injury guarantees play a factor? I'm sure all those kind of minute details are what are probably holding up a deal. But I think both sides know that it's going to take over $50 million a year to get it done. I just think that the particulars, what that guarantee number is overall and what it takes to factor in is probably what they have to come to a conclusion on. But both Tua side and Dolphin side, I've talked to both of them, and there hasn't been much concern. It just hasn't been done yet. And so my expectation, there's still something done before September, But until then, there will be loads of speculation.
Cam, a lot of people in this state, Tennessee fans, will have an eye on the Dolphins, certainly because of Jalen Wright obviously being drafted. Just what are some of the early conversations on how Jalen has looked in OTAs and how he may be utilized in 2024?
Yeah, it's just been 1 week so far, but I would say that the speed element with Mike McDaniel's love of speed, if you just look at the Dolphins offense, makes him fall right in line. I had a chance to talk with Mike McDaniel about Jalen Wright, and he said, look, the reality of Jalen Wright's game is not just the speed, it's his ability to go upfield immediately, not just dance around in the backfield like you see a lot of the speed backs do. That makes him such a fit in their outside zone scheme. They run a lot of outside zone, outside of the tight ends, outside foot. And with the speed they have on the outside with their receivers, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and now Odell Beckham, they need running backs that are going to be able to hit that edge and then go upfield and direct. And so Mike McDaniel loves running backs. They have Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, who they drafted last year. But just like the San Francisco 49ers have done for many years before McCaffrey, they want to run a three-back system. And so I'd expect all three of those guys to get a lot of carries and just kind of switch through the backfield. But they thought Jalen Wright was too good of a value to pass up. They ended up trading a third next year to get back into the fourth round for him. And they actually considered him for their second round pick at 55. And so that kind of just told you how much they valued him at that point. And they felt like they had to get him.
I don't know if Cam Wolfe at the NFL Network here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Always good to make time, even while making sure that Layla has a piece of candy to keep her satiated throughout. Maybe we'll even get a game pick from Layla. I know she's been doing that throughout the course of last season. At some point, a Super Bowl prediction from the young Wolf there. But looking at Jacksonville, I know Cam, you spend a fair amount of time down there throughout the course of the season and throughout the course of the Southeast with the NFL franchises in this part of the country. What's the vibe with the Jags right now? Trevor Lawrence in an interesting payment type of situation as well, trying to work through the contract. And I don't know whose situation is more cut and dried. Tua seems more obvious to me, but I imagine there would be some people who are Lawrence advocates who might push back on that fact.
Yeah, whenever I think about these things, I think about like those social media gamuts where you have to choose between, would you rather have this quarterback or that quarterback? Would you rather have Trevor Lawrence or Tua? And like everybody's going to have a different take. But I think both teams realize like, look, our quarterback is a lot better than whatever other options are. Like, and both teams have really been in quarterback purgatory before their guy for really their last 20 years. And so it's always comparing it to like, is Trevor Lawrence or Tua Patrick Mahomes? No. But are they the best of the available options? Yes. And so I think Trevor Lawrence's situation is different because it's not as much injury-based. Tua, I think if he didn't have the injury, it would be a no-brainer. I think Trevor Lawrence doesn't have the injuries, but his has been inconsistency. Last year, he was relatively healthy, but he threw a lot of interceptions, had a lot of ball security issues. But you see the talent, like it pops off the screen. And so do you bet on that potential coming to fruition or do you wait? I think that they technically could wait, but there has been conversations for I'm understanding as far as his deal. And I like to anticipate him getting done before the season too. I think a lot of this is balancing, like, what is the risk in paying, waiting? Because you look at it down the line, C.J. Stroud's going to come up next offseason. He's probably going to reset the quarterback market. If the Jags decide to wait, the number may be $60 million next offseason instead of $50 million. And so do you look smart coming in now a year early, or do you wait if you're really uncertain? I think the Jags are certain, just like the Dolphins are certain. And so it's just figuring out that number. So Trevor, I think, is that's going to get done. I think the Jags are really just trying to figure out how do they take that next step. Remember, they won a playoff game 2022. Last year, they took a step back and lost the last month of the season and ended up collapsing. What do you do to get over that hump? They lost Calvin Ridley. They're in a really kind of weird period where they should be a contender, but if they don't do what they need to do to get over the hump this year, what does that mean for Doug Peterson? What does that mean for Trent Baalke? I think that not enough people are talking about just kind of maybe on how on edge the Jacksonville Jaguars are, because once you peak that potential, if you go backwards, then people start being on the watch for their jobs. And I don't think that's something we would have thought maybe a year ago this time.
Yeah, the quarterback discussion is always interesting, especially coming off the offseason that we just had, Cam, where so many of those dudes, and maybe it's specific to the kind of quarterback talent or lack thereof that's been in the past couple of drafts, but the idea that so many of these guys have already been traded while still on their rookie deals. For example, Pittsburgh reshaping their quarterback room the way that they did. Chicago feeling it necessary to move Justin Fields at that particular point in time. You see Zach Wilson getting another opportunity before, Zach hasn't done anything that would warrant a second contract to date. So we'll see how that experiment plays out. But like with Will Levis, you mentioned that shortened clock that every team with a quarterback to pay is on. Cam, they kind of have to figure out Will Levis this year as a second-round pick because they don't have the luxury of the fifth-year option to kind of play this thing out further.
Yeah, I think, Buck, you're right on the money. You're seeing teams give up on quarterbacks, for lack of a better word, earlier. But I think it's also just catching up with the times because the value of drafting a quarterback and having a quarterback on a rookie deal is so valuable that I think teams realize we can't wait 4 years to figure out if we've got the guy or not and kind of be stuck in purgatory. You mentioned Kenny Pickett. You had Kenny Pickett. You had Mac Jones. You had even mid-level quarterbacks like the Falcons with Desmond Ridder, like giving up on guys after maybe a year and essentially moving forward. They have to make that call because if you wait till you're 3 or 4, you got to make a decision on your fifth-year option and all of that resort. Look at what's happening in Green Bay. Like Green Bay went to 3 years with Aaron Rodgers waiting, with Jordan Love waiting behind Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love has one great year, which I think Jordan Love's going to be a star, but he really has 1 year of evidence, and now they're going to have to pay him essentially $50 million, or he's going to potentially reach free agency. And so, a part of that, the negative of sort of the Jordan Love plan, is just you just have so little time to evaluate for sure if he's the guy. And so I thought that's why I love the Titans playing Will Levis as much as they did last year, because at least you get an extra half season. But I do think that by the end of the 2024 season, the Titans would love to have a for sure answer. Is Will our guy, or do we have to go hard at quarterback in the 2025 offseason?
If I gave you one training camp to pick from heading into, the next couple of weeks and months before we get that really ramped up, that you were most interested in attending, which team would it be for and why?
Sorry, Titans fan. I'm going to go with the Houston Texans, though.
Sure.
I think that team is so intriguing to me, and it starts with their quarterback, C.J. Stroud. Like what they did last year with a roster that I did not think was anywhere near playoff ready to start the year, kind of set the floor for them, in my imagine. And then kind of the moves they made to go all in, so to speak, this offseason, getting a Stephon Diggs. How does he connect with C.J. Stroud? The year 2 in DeMeco Ryan's system for guys like Will Anderson and Derek Stingley. I think, and this is just kind of a mid-May projection, not trying to make a hot take, but if I was picking one team in the AFC that I thought I had the best chance to dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs, it would be the Houston Texans to me. I've seen Buffalo try 3 or 4 years, and I think they've taken a step back. I don't think it's them. Cincinnati's had the best shot at them, but Burrow's had some injuries. They've had some issues as far as, what they're going to do with T. Higgins. I just think that Houston Texans is that next young up-and-coming team. They're balancing out that roster. And if CJ is who he showed us last offseason, then this could be the team that is the greatest rival to Patrick Mahomes for years to come.
I'm with that. Cam Wolfe overcoming all kinds of adversity, sneezes, childcare, everything in between. Buddy, thank you so much for taking the time. Tell Layla we said hi, and we'll look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate you, fellas.
That's the main
Apologies for the chaos.
No, please. Come on, Cam. Thank you for taking time to do the radio show while trying to watch your child. You didn't have to do that.
Absolutely. All right, man.
That's our buddy Cam Wolfe at the NFL Network making it happen. I mean, you can't dispute his logic there behind Houston.
No, they won the division last year, and they added really interesting pieces like Stephon Diggs, Danielle Hunter. It's going to be, they're, especially from a national perspective, the most interesting team in the AFC South to watch.
If not the whole AFC. Now, the intrigue of Kansas City.
Yeah, because it's been a bleep show.
Well, the AFC's not a bleep show. Are you kidding
Kansas City, from a PR standpoint.
Sure, but that doesn't matter if you win football games. Like, nobody's going to care about Wanye Morris's pot citation if the Kansas City Chiefs go 11-6 again or whatever. Well, I don't even remember their record last year. Either way, his point, though, about have we kind of cycled through the Bills as being the team that is the most consistent threat to Kansas City? We've talked about this as a show, and as long as Josh Allen is there as the second, and you can debate Allen, Burrow, like I said, Lamar Jackson you can't ignore as a 2-time MVP, even though I think Lamar, there is a little bit of a drop-off. I don't know why Houston couldn't be the next greatest threat to Kansas City in the conference. Baltimore feels like it's their turn, truly their turn. That Lamar is finally in a place, both as a player and with a roster and a coaching staff, that can actually threaten and make a legitimate postseason push. To be undermined by the Chiefs the way that they were is going to be frustrating because only Tom Brady and Joe Burrow have actually gotten past Patrick Mahomes in the postseason to date. It's not a simple thing. It's a really, really difficult Rubik's Cube or cluster bleep for the entire conference to figure out, but it does feel like Buffalo's time, or at least their time as the greatest threat to the Chiefs, is passing a little bit, but we'll see how they rebound with all the roster construction they've had to do. 615-737-1045 is the number. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, Lucas is coming back with Hattie B's Hot Chicken, so we're all fired up about it on a Friday. It's 1045 The Zone. Boogie Shoes doesn't just make us happy because it's at the end of the week, although it's been a fun week. It is good to have you back, bud, even though you got a mouthful of chicken and I know you can't talk to me. Because Hattie B's has made their delivery, and we're all very happy about it. We did, pimento mac and cheese. I saw some potato salad. What are we working with? Medium tenders?
Medium chicken tenders.
Okay.
The potato salad was your choice. The pimento mac was mine, and you can never go wrong.
No, absolutely. And it was delivered because we mobile ordered it on the Hattie B's app. 615-737-1045. Last call for phone calls if you got them. So, some comments reacting to Cam Wolfe's appearance with us about Houston and Tennessee. Lucas, you scrambled out of here to go grab the chicken bucket, so you didn't really hear that. But I gave Cam the option of any NFL team, any training camp, who are you going to visit and why? And he said Houston, for all the different reasons that we talked about the Houston Texans, all the different parts and pieces they've added in free agency, traded for, in Stephon Diggs, and the quarterback, who is excellent, or who was an excellent rookie. We will find out whether his excellence will be sustained this year, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to do that after winning the division. Some people commenting on YouTube, tripping Titans. Houston is so last year. Titans, more interesting this year. I think there might be some bias there. And Cam's logic was not just because of Houston and the intrigue there, but because the Bills are kind of cycling down as being the biggest threat to Kansas City in the AFC right now. The Ravens look like they are probably the most viable threat. There's some uncertainty around Joe Burrow and the Bengals just because coordinator change, you're going to look a little different without Tyler Boyd. Joe Burrow, if he's healthy, you're a threat. But Buffalo feels like it's not as pressing as it has been, because really it's been Mahomes and Allen. Who's going to get the better of one another? And it's been consistently Mahomes. Josh has never beaten him in a postseason game to advance. Houston feels like a team that's probably next up to take a crack at Kansas City. And they may be more equipped or more well-equipped to do so if Stroud continues to ascend in year 2.
What Houston is right now feels like an elevated version of what the Titans are. Much more elevated because they've done better in the draft, right? Like the likes of Nico Collins and Tank Dell. The Titans don't have those type of young players to lean on. But in terms of the move they made to take them to the next level with the second-year quarterback, who is more proven than Will Levis right now, like what are the two most high-profile moves the Texans made?
Stephon Diggs.
Yep.
Oh, Danielle Hunter.
Yeah, Danielle Hunter.
Yeah,
Stephon Diggs turns 31 this season. Danielle Hunter turns 30 this season. Similar to the Titans, a lot of those moves, what are the two biggest moves? Calvin Ridley, L'Jarius Sneed?
Yeah.
Right? Ridley turns 30, I believe, this season.
He will.
Sneed will turn 29.
Mm-hmm. I think he turns 28.
Okay.
He's pretty young.
So, and a chips in for these next 2 seasons feel for both. The Texans have just had more built in because of what they've done in the draft than the Titans.
I'm fascinated to see how this AFC South plays out. I know I've said that a million times, but I mean it. I'm really, really curious about all 4 of these teams. I think Greg and I are going team by team in the division, first and foremost, because the AFC South is as threatening to one another as any division in football this season. And we talked a lot about Anthony Richardson on the last episode of the podcast. Richardson has the highest talent ceiling of the 4. Which is crazy to think about because we know the least about him as a player. Would you take Levis over Richardson in any situation? Just if I presented the two of them as players, is there any situation in which you would choose Will Levis over Anthony Richardson? Now, I know that's not a real scenario because teams are obviously specific to their needs and what they value in players and personalities and whatever. But I wonder how many people, if just presented the option of the two of them, would take Levis over Richardson. I don't know that I could.
Yeah, maybe the conversation's different in the draft process than after a rookie year. I think there are more availability concerns with Richardson.
Sure.
And his style of play. Not that there aren't with Levis. That feels like the criticism Callahan has come back on Levis. Like the one thing that has couched all of his praise for the quarterback has been now, got to dial it back a little bit. But both are in a great situation in terms of head coach, right?
Yeah.
In terms of a play caller and someone that has found success working directly with quarterbacks in the past. So it's going to be a really fun arms race between the two. And you lump C.J. Stroud in there over the next 5 or so years.
Will Anderson on YouTube says no evidence that Richardson has a high ceiling. He's the most athletic quarterback in the history of athletic testing at the combine. There is all of the evidence. That's literally all of the evidence. It's statistical evidence everywhere for you to
Yeah, it's no evidence that he's going to reach that ceiling, but
No,
the
sure.
ceiling itself is not in question.
That's what I said. The highest ceiling of any of them, because Will Anderson immediately spits at me. Watch games, not highlights. No, I'm talking about athletic testing. Relax. Jameson says he'd take Levis over Richardson in every situation. Maybe that ends up being so, but to date, we're not there yet. I'm curious. Polls, please. Yeah. Jackson is doing his own show in my ear the entire day.
Literally,
The
yes.
entire day, Jackson is doing his own show in my ear.
Oh, if you guys heard the show we did off the air.
I'm not doing that. I'm just saying it's very distracted. People are probably wondering why I'm laughing to myself like an idiot on the YouTube stream because I can't see Jackson.
Polls presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What's the more entertaining postseason right now, the NHL or the NBA? 55% say the NHL. And I think I agree because both conference finals just feel like they're between contenders. They're high stakes. The atmospheres have been incredible. Whereas in the NBA, I don't know, Celtics take a 2-0 lead. It feels hard to imagine
It's
the Pacers
pretty
crawling
disappointing
back.
that the Knicks, like I'm even like liking the Pacers, it's pretty disappointing that the Knicks and carrying kind of the theater of it didn't make it.
The Rangers are carrying that now.
Through. I haven't. I'll be honest. I'm pretty bad about turning off hockey after the Preds get eliminated. It's not because I don't like the hockey, because every time I turn it on, it's a Game 7.
It's been
finish.
electric.
It's like some kind of ridiculous overtime scoring situation or whatever. Like
Oilers double OT last night.
Every time I just happen to stumble into the hockey playoffs, but I'm done a bad job seeking out hockey postseason because I'm more prone to just throw on the basketball game.
Rangers dropped game 1 at home to the Panthers, so probably need to win game 2 at home. The President's Trophy winners and Peter Laviolette trying to become the second former Preds coach to win a Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Does the NCAA and House settlement do anything to stabilize college athletics? 80% say no.
80% say no?
80% say no. In the short term, it does not.
In the short term, it does not. But in the long term, absolutely. I mean, it does everything to stabilize college athletics.
It's the biggest step we've ever taken in that regard.
So I don't know how 80% of people could say no flatly if you didn't present them with the option of immediately or in the future.
Although, what will we look at as the biggest step towards that 10 years from now? Will we look at that Supreme Court decision that began NIL? Because that's the real first domino. Or do we look at this settlement of revenue sharing finally coming to college athletics?
Oh, I think this is the bigger deal. This is the bigger amount of money. Name, image, and likeness is such a small pool compared to the actual money that's being generated.
Are the Dolphins contenders or pretenders in 2024? 67% are going pretenders.
I agree. I think they're paper tigers.
So you think the Bills are more of a contender than the Dolphins?
I do. They have the better
Strictly
quarterback.
because of Josh Allen?
They have the better quarterback. And I like, honestly, for all the 9/11, I don't want to say 9/11 jokes about McDermott, but you know, the situation, all the jokes about McDermott, he's a really damn good defensive coach. Like, they didn't have anybody at the end of the year, and they were still fielding a very competent defense.
I want to say the Dolphins are more of contenders than the Bills, but it's more because I just don't consider the Bills contenders this year.
Don't trust them.
But I don't trust the Dolphins. Yeah, I'm with you. Which player on the Titans O-line are you least worried about in 2024? Scoob says Peter Skoronski. DJ says Cushenberry is the easy answer, so keeping him in mind, I'm going to say I am not worried about Peter Skoronski. He looks like a brick wall had a baby with a mountain.
And you wanted to do guard talk today.
We're going to do guard talk.
I'm not doing guard talk.
Goody says Cushenberry. UW says Cushenberry. Brock says Cushenberry. Karen says Cushenberry. Cushenberry is the most reliable member of this offensive line, right?
Yeah, he's done it.
Guard talk on Tuesday. Those are the polls.
No guard talk. You know what you could get? You can get Brad Hopkins and Blaine Bishop because we're out of here, and they're coming up next.